All right. I think we're live once again. It feels like we just did this yesterday because we did. But we've got another lunch and learn today. I hope everyone's ready to dive into the developer problem that I think we've all been experiencing throughout our careers. I've got Janet Bartoli with us today. She's going to talk about specific problems that we've all faced during our stints in these wonderful in-house or agency situations where the developer has accidentally screwed things up and unfortunately has caused some problems with your SEO. So I'd also like to introduce Joe. He's also with the DMO. Jojo, hello.
Hello.
And so with that, let's give Janet the floor and she can take it away.
Great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Just can you see my screen?
No, not yet. Let me go change that.
I was just going to say, okay, I'll do it again.
Switch it to something else. There we go. Okay,
Yep.
We're good.
Hey, well, thanks, guys. Thanks for allowing me to come here and talk a little bit about something that I think a lot of SEOs inherently run into, this problem that is their SEO programs aren't successful because they're not getting things implemented. They need the support from their development teams. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. First, I just wanted to share a little bit about who I am. I have been deeply specialized in SEO for the last 16 years. I've been on the boutique agency side, worked in-house. I've worked for a very large management consultancy, and I've created loads and loads of SEO programs from scratch. Many of the names are listed here, but most notably Fiat, we just completely built their SEO program from the ground up, and many of the others. I love teaching SEO. This is one of the hats the SEOs actually should be wearing is that of the educator, especially if you're in-house. And even if you're in the agency side, it's always beneficial to teach what you know and share what you know. So why SEO education will actually, this is an indirect benefit to you. So it makes your job and your life so much easier because you're providing that education. You're creating this environment where it's more conducive to getting the work done. And when you help your client or your employer and the teams that you work with, when you educate them, they become smarter and they appreciate all the complexities that really are in SEO. Then they say things like, "Oh, it's not just about the keyword," or they'll start any of the myths that they may have had about SEO, particularly on the technical side. You can pretty much quash those through any of your education. So education will make them smarter, not just the developers, but even if you invite any senior leadership in there, it helps them as well. You can avoid the SEO silo. So many of you SEOs know that if you are in-house, especially, the silo is we're going about our business and we're doing things like migrations or redesigns. We're doing replatforms or any other, product launch of any kind. And we just ignore the SEO, hence the silo. So you want to break out of that silo and really work to kind of getting this sort of embedded in the culture of the company that you're working with. So by helping them understand that the SEO channel is part of the broader digital marketing strategy and what the developers do directly influences what could negatively impact your SEO results. So avoid the SEO silo. You can definitely accomplish a lot more. So, if you come right in and you get your technical audit all done and you've got all these awesome recommendations, if you don't have access to making any of the changes on the server side or on the back end in any way, you're going to need the support of your engineering or the developers. So it's really in your best interest to work with them and create an SEO swim lane or a space for you that you can work with them and say every month, this week, third week of every month, we're going to get these SEO recommendations implemented. And then you're just working with them as you're a part of their team. So that way you become more successful and you'll accomplish a lot more. The other departments that I have done lots of SEO trainings in just about every place that I've been at, including the agency side. And they all want to learn SEO, where I would just hold like a lunch and learn or a monthly knowledge exchange when I would work for a large global organization. And I would just bring in different international teams, and then we would just talk through a specific, a particular best practice. And I would get people from random other groups that had nothing to do with the team that I was initially speaking to. I would just get, maybe somebody from the PR team or editorial just jumping in. They were curious. They just really wanted to understand a lot more about SEO. You also avoid the SEO disasters and the missed opportunities. One of the best stories that I've got so many, especially around technical SEO, particularly when you're working on an enterprise site. That's the majority of the work that you're going to be, sort of getting involved in is the technical side of things. There's a story that when I walked right into Verizon, actually, it was about 8 years ago now. It was a number of years ago. And this was through the large management consulting firm that I was working with. They didn't have anyone who understood why their traffic was falling like 40% month over month for 6 months. So they had gone through this major redesign in December of the previous year, and the traffic is falling month over month. They have no idea what the hell is going on. So the SVP at Verizon was extraordinarily pissed and just wanted answers. So this is my first meeting with them to help to figure out what's actually going on here. So this is what happens when you have the wrong people in place, and why the SEO team needs to be in place. They thought their alt text around the text around your images. They thought that was just missing or not correct. So I had explained to them that had nothing to do with the traffic decrease month over month. And that and this was a missed opportunity because the developers and the designers didn't realize they needed to bring SEO in at the very start. So you're always going to miss, traffic decline or traffic loss, or with these links are broken when you bring in your education and you provide that to them.
Well, and if I can interject too.
Yeah, absolutely.
This happened daily at GoDaddy. Daily. It was just always rampant. And you know what the problem is I don't even think that it's the SEO department or the SEO person that wants to be siloed from everyone. It's everyone else wanting to silo them from the SEO person, like at least in my experience. And it's so shitty, I guess, that stuff happens. Like I remember I was like always arguing with the SEM person because she was always like doing these deals and whatnot, and I was being held by my new customer numbers, and then I find out that she's been shortchanging me with like some crazy discount on these products, and it's like, well, duh, no wonder no one's going to be going and buying through organic. They're going to be going through these ads. So that was a problem. Plus, like the developers and everything, they just never ever talked to me, and I felt so lonely.
No, right. And I always found the developers of everyone in the organization, I kind of sold it to them like, this is only going to help your resume. When you guys, SEO, you can now put that on SEO on your resume, that you have the SEO technical best practices as part of your skill set. But they were very curious. They wanted to understand why things didn't work. Why couldn't they do one thing? Because it was, a developer's objective is, how quickly can I get this from here to here in as quick, fast, efficient time as possible, barring anything having to do with a search engine. I worked with actually it was StubHub last year. They have an offshore team in Shanghai, and really smart, great people. These developers were just efficient at trying, how can we solve some of these SEO barriers and the problems that existed. And so what they did was they noticed that there was a page speed issue. It was like the processing on the browser side was just really sluggish and slow. So they figured, well, if we create this mini bot that just serves up different information to the user than to the search engine, then that will be that'll be a good way to take care of it. And so I had to explain to them that you can't solve the problem by showing one thing to a search engine, showing something different to a user. So it was a Band-Aid, but was not effective, obviously, from an SEO standpoint. So just they're very interested and wanting to learn. I think I've had one developer in all of the educations I've ever done that just kept, refusing to hear what I was trying to say. And so I would always have to give something from the developer, Google developer, here's a link, just a justification, a resource that, maybe they saw as more legit.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, like, one thing that we did over at GoDaddy was we would do these lunch and learns. So it was like, hey, let's go out to Bondurant Racetrack, which is local here in Phoenix, and let's go race cars and talk about SEO. Or, we could go hiking in the hills or something like that. We were always trying to figure out some sort of physical activity that we could involve with these other groups, which unfortunately didn't work so well sometimes. But yeah, we would always try to do some sort of physical activity that we could, involve these developers or even product managers or marketing managers, to try to break the barriers down.
Which is far more creative than bringing them donuts, which is sort of the, the old model. Just bring them donuts and,
Let's go to the movies. We'll watch a movie together. And then
exactly.
Like, you're sitting in a dark room for an hour and a half. Where's the teamwork? I don't see it.
Exactly. So, another thing is when, and again, I talk to, I work with a lot of SEOs, even like the ones who are been in it for 5 or 10 years. And I say, the reason, again, that there's a lack of efficiency in getting your stuff done is because when was the last time you educated anybody? And so it's like, well, I did like when I first came in, but I just got so busy. So, but I had to explain, like, should be part of your work, is this training. Like, and it doesn't take much. I mean, I would just do a 45-minute, and you treat it like a webinar or a podcast or anything. Just here's something I'm going to talk about for 45 minutes. This is what we applied to one of our sites. And if you're in a company, it's easy to say, remember that project we rolled out 3 months ago? Here's the result. And you guys did this. And now you're giving them credit because they applied all the recommendations that you asked for and they did them correctly. So now you can say, here's the lift we got. And isn't that awesome? So now if we do more of this, now you guys get all that credit. And again, internally, in-house, it's all about what your reviews look like. And, trying to, especially as an SEO, making sure that you are still a valuable member of that organization so that, as budgets decrease and as other things, kind of go away in this kind of weird, surreal time that we're living in, you want to make sure to keep your job secure. Of anything, the SEO should be secure, but providing value within as part of what you offer them, like in education, educating other teams. It's really a beneficial thing. So I usually, and I put the last thing here, when it's like monthly, quarterly, it's up to you, but I find I would do it like monthly for like 45 minutes, and I would just send out a link. And then I would always ask for feedback and just get them to give me what it was. What do you want to learn next? Maybe it's something about one of the big Google updates or something. It could be anything. And you just go and talk about that. So now some people might be thinking, right, how do you get it all set up? So I start early. So if I'm being brought in-house and I'm starting off as a director of SEO, this is the greatest opportunity is to get to know everybody. So all the stakeholders, and get to know the developers, get to know who the CIO is or the CTO is, and then work your way in that whole business unit. And then ask, hey, would you guys mind it if I provided you guys a little SEO training, like once a month or maybe once a quarter, whatever fits in their schedule, and they'll be like totally all over it. So start as early as you can, and introduce an agenda so that they have something to look forward to, and keep to the time because they may be running into another meeting or something else. So you start anytime. So even though it's July, you can start now. You don't have to wait till January. And you really need to own it. And I mentioned before, but just set it up like it's a webinar. And this is, the in-house SEO has like sort of this, it's essentially your own SEO business within an organization. So you need to be the leader and you need to be the subject matter expert. And so you need to kind of set this all up, invite them, reach out to them afterward, ask them for feedback and ask them for any input, what other things that you wanted to include. You might also bring in a guest. So many times I would work with Conductor Searchlight as my SEO enterprise platform of choice. And Bright Edge can do this as well, but you can bring in anybody from that team and then just have them speak on a particular topic, whether it's something in the dashboard or reporting or whatever. But again, you're providing that level of education. And you customize it to whatever team that you're working with. If, as I mentioned, if it's an engineering team in Shanghai or if it's a development team in Manhattan, you want to make it customized to what their environment. So understand what CMS platform you're working with. I mean, is it Sitecore or ATG? Get to really know that platform well from an SEO standpoint, how to better optimize it. And then you can kind of start speaking to that in things about, better ways that you can improve the overall web performance, because that's their number one goal too, is to make sure that the web performance is the best it can be. And share all of your SEO stuff with them. This is like, I don't know what it is. Some of the SEOs just feel like they got to keep, all of their best shit to themselves. And to me, it makes no sense. It's like, just share it. And you know what? The smarter they get, the better that, your overall SEO program will be, and the easier your life will be. So you will always be perceived as the expert, the subject matter expert in your organization anyway. So just having them learn from you and you teaching them everything that you know is just always going to really benefit the organization anyway. And of course, answer any of their questions. So what I would do is I would tell them, send me an email, give me a call, sometimes in the hallway when we were in the hallway, passing by and just having conversation about things. They would say, hey, Janet, we're getting ready to launch this new product page. We're going to put it on a different platform. And I told them, my team to hold up because we wanted to make sure that we brought you in to make sure that everything was optimized and we weren't missing anything. Do you have some time to take a look at that? Yeah, absolutely. So they get to know you and understand what your role is to bring you in early. Oh, were you going to say something, Jim?
I love saying stuff. If I could. I'm just like, I'm remembering the bad times. I'm trying to keep them out. One of the things that we did was to inject like a pass-fail SEO piece inside like the ticketing system. So they would automatically have to come to us no matter what, if they were publishing a page or if they were migrating something. And that really upset them.
Yeah.
But it also really paid off for us too. But it's funny because you have to take these different tactics with them, right? Because if you do too much of the policing, then it's just like, the dog that always gets kicked, right? Oh, I did another thing. My master's upset. And it's like, well, no, I wouldn't be upset. Like, this is the 5th time I've told you not to do these stupid redirects the incorrect way. Like, just come on, man. You've been working here for 4 years.
We do the Git issue as well.
Yeah.
Where it automatically has to touch SEO department before going live. It's just a little checkbox.
Yep. Yes. Got to be part of the process. Absolutely. And what I would do is I would have just regular, depending on what the work was, like with that example that I gave with Verizon, I just created we would do daily stand-ups. And then we would just, it was just, you're also the project manager. So you got to make sure that, You understand these are the recommendations. When are you going to get them implemented? Do you have any questions? What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? Every single day. That's, the best way to encourage them to get these things implemented and not just sit around and don't tell me something else just came up because you told me that you would block this time out every single month. So it's a negotiation of when can we get these things implemented? Let's get them implemented. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Or I'll supply you with every resource, known to Google or anyone else that can show you exactly what the best practices are and how they should get implemented. So you want to review that work and make sure that you give them credit, because at the end of the day, if they are in charge, they are in charge of the whole, the entire website. You need to make sure that they get the credit for getting those things implemented. And I mentioned, ask them, make it engaging and interactive, and make it fun for them. And also create like a Slack channel, or I did like a SharePoint, where all the best practices, I would like write up these technical SEO best practice guides for Procter & Gamble. I made one because they've got Tide and they got all these products, every single product has its own website. And so they're constantly updating or creating a new product, a new site, or migration, massive migrations over, they're changing platforms. So I created all these best practice guides for them, and I would keep them updated every year so that they were current. It just wasn't something from 15 years ago. And they would have this ability to just go there and refer to that best practices guide. And it was a table of contents, and it was just really beneficial for them to follow along and understand what I need to make sure that I check off before we even think about going to production. So I don't know if you guys, what I did was, I can just run through these really quickly, but this is an example of one of the technical workshops that I had given one of my clients' engineering teams. And this is at least can give some of the SEOs some ideas, just kind of like, give them a 101 overview. They are not taught SEO at all. They don't understand. Very few of them, I would say, understand how SEO works. I heard a developer who was, one of the VIP on SharePoint last year said to me, "We're still using keywords, the keyword meta tag, right?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "This is 2019. No, we're not using that." So, but you need a 101 because they don't know. And so I'll just go through, you can create these and customize these, whatever they are, according to whatever it is that you feel your client, or if you're in-house, what your company, the corporate culture, what it looks like. But it's like, what are the key sites that are the key elements in the site that we have to optimize for? Domain side or design side. So, I say, okay, what is search engine optimization? Still, some of them don't know SEO is search engine optimization. So I have to kind of spell that out. And then I give them this whole, the on page, off page, and so that they understand, these are the different elements that are involved. And we start on the technical side of things, and this is where you guys are. And then we move to, more of the content and user experience, but the user experience plays into what you guys do when you think about page speed and, the security of a site, et cetera. And then I do things like, scrolling, indexing, retrieval, and ranking, and just, again, the basics so that they understand what it is they should be doing. And then I give them, so this is sort of like the 3-tier methodology that I go through with every client. And I say, you guys are sort of right here. This is where you're solving the structural defects in your site. And so we want to optimize the CMS and, improve the crawl budget. And so these are some of the highlighter things that we're going to talk through. And then I let them know early on, this requires collaboration. So we want to make sure all the teams are involved, because it takes governance or a framework to make sure that the company is all on board with what it is we're actually doing. And so I'll kind of go through that and go through sort of the core elements, and then the basic stuff like, okay, now let's talk about the XML sitemap, and using a sitemap doesn't guarantee all these items in your sitemap will be crawled. So I give them always sort of like an FYI, kind of like, there's this tip, here's what you should know. what to do, what not to do, that kind of thing. So this sort of starts off kind of like the best practices guide, and then they can take this presentation back with them and then just kind of refer to these certain things here. But the guide will go through more process and like a step-by-step on how to implement these things too. And then same thing for robots. This one in particular, again, it depends on who the client or who, where my environment is. But if I notice that there's a particular problem that they're having, or there's an internal debate about something, then I'll just say, okay, we're going to talk about that in the next training. And so let's talk about X robots and the purpose of it and what it's going to do, and kind of, what, and then I'll pull a quote out directly from Google and just kind of say, boom, here it is. And then we can have a discussion that might be a half an hour. Just depends.
Half an hour. That would be a dream.
Yeah. But so anyway, I just wanted to, and after through all these, I just wanted to show you with you guys just kind of like at least some of what I do. And then I'll just throw a John Mueller in there every now and again, just to emphasize and to reiterate, a particular point. But the best things, as I said, are when we're having conversations, and I'm having a conversation with developers and they're talking about something like Hashbang, and Janet, what do you think about that? And I'll say, I'm not going to tell you what I think about it from a developer's perspective. I'm going to tell you what I think about it from an SEO standpoint. And so here's the horse's mouth, the horse's mouth, and this is what he says. And I've seen it better. The other thing too is saying that not only have we applied this to this site here, but these other clients, I've done the same thing, and the results were this. So that it's also justification, not just what Google says, but I've actually done this because maybe something that one might work in one environment may not be perfect in another. And so you want to say, let's just test this out. This is a something that is recommended. Let's try this and see what happens.
And I think too, we're living in some crazy times right now, but even just listening to you, I think in the stuff that I've done in the past, it was usually like a PowerPoint presentation in front of people or whatever. But now I'm thinking just within the time that we're in, maybe the smart thing to do would be to have some sort of video training session, right? Where you're like,
oh, yeah.
This week it's going to be tags. Next week it's going to be sitemaps. The week after that, it's going to be something else. Yeah,
absolutely. Sort of like in almost like a course format where they can kind of pick and choose, here's developer 101 basically, and you can kind of create that whole curriculum for them. And it depends on, I've worked with some IT directors where they would say like that, where they would mention if we can do a training where they can sort of it's almost like part of their promotion, it's you've got to go through some of this SEO training, and they would ask for some information. I never really actually built it out, but I would share with them some of the resources, and then they would sort of create that curriculum for them.
Yep.
But, it's always the do and the don't, do this, don't do this. International and another perfect situation where you're gonna need to kind of focus on that. Anything that maybe an update or something new or something that Google is talking about is another prime opportunity to kind of bring it right in front of them and share with them. And it's always good because they want to know what's in the news, what's happening in the industry. And you're sort of like their resource to provide all of that to them.
Yeah. I think by the way, a lot of SEOs, what they try to do, I'm guilty of this in particular, is trying to control everything and not disseminating the information to everyone and trying to have them learn the processes behind it. And so what winds up happening is that you get overloaded and inundated with so much stuff to fix that you're just upset all the time. And it's a lot easier to have a lot of little stormtroopers, shout out to TJ, to do all of the work for you and not have those stressors. So I think that, something that you might want to consider is, trying to have an army of people fix your stuff versus just you.
Yeah. Yeah. definitely. I know there's some SEOs that just want to be the hero and solve it all and make the changes. And it's just far easier just to, work with the team and get them to become friends with them and colleagues with them. And because you work in the same environment, it's just best to really kind of get to know them and share this with them. And I've had a lot of friends who were developers that just really appreciated it. So, it's a good thing to do. And then I give them, here's a slew of resources you can go and drown yourself in. And so that's really what I just wanted to share with you guys.
That's awesome. No, I was just thinking.
We know that the Bing Webmaster Tools guide just got updated.
That's right.
That's right.
Christy just did that.
She's so wonderful. We should have had her on.
We have had her on.
We'll have her on again. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about a lot of the stuff that you're saying. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. And realistically, it all boils down to two different halves, right? You could take the policing approach or the I'm going to give you candy approach for doing a good job. Here's your Scooby snack. And both work to some degree. And I think you actually have to implement both of them in order to really facilitate things. I know from my experience, like there were times where someone would screw up a page and I had to go to the CEO and be like, look, man, like I'm all for process and everything, but like you just lost rankings across this page and it's going to impact you by $50,000 a month if this doesn't get fixed. And by the way, the fix is like 2 minutes worth of work. So I'm not going to wait 3 months for the stupid ticket to go through the system. Like I need your assistance. And he would just rain down terror. Raw. It was great.
Yes.
But then other times, the problem is that you burn people out on that. You burn your friendship bridge or whatever bridge you had with them. And then it just breaks down communication and then everyone hates you. So there is that dual-edged sword of having to do that. I know for me, I mean, let's talk about, we got enough time. We got plenty of time. Let's talk about some of the common problems. We were talking a little bit earlier before the show went live, but like my nemesis was always 302 redirects. I swear to God, it pained me so much. I'm rinsing my fingers because I need a stress ball to just get it out. I was just so upset because it was like almost daily. And the developer guys were like sitting right next to me. Like they were like 15 feet away from me. It was like 6 or 7 of them. And I found out that like 2 of them were constantly doing these 302 redirects, but like having to go through the tickets and like figure out who was working on what ticket was like nearly impossible. And then finally I just went over there and I was like, we need to have a sit down because I'm starting to get super pissed. And they're like, oh yeah, what's going on? What's going on? I was like, well, someone's doing some redirects and they're like, oh, it's him and him. And I was like, perfect. So we're not going to do 302 redirects anymore, boys. We're going to do 301s. That's all we're going to do. We're never going to do a 302. 302 bad, 301 good. So that was like one of the things for us. The other one was this didn't work very well, but we created this like guard, this SEO guard that was some sort of homegrown program that one of the developers created. But it was like a checklist, right, for all of the different things. Does it have a title tag? Does it have a H1 tag? Does it have 200 words of content? Blah 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 blah. Well, the problem was that thing was just so nitty gritty that like it stopped every ticket that was going through the system. So it was really a bad idea. I mean, it was a good idea, but it was a bad idea. So for those who might want to actually create something like that, I would probably advise against it. It will never work. Going out and teaching people was honestly the best thing.
Well, I would offer a change there, Jim. The way we got it to work when we were kind of doing it at scale was to have those checks far earlier in the process. So it wasn't like before they turn it in. It was as it's being created, don't forget the following items. Yeah. And so it's like as it's being created. Our big issue was always canonicals. Somehow, some way, we would get, multiple versions of the same stuff created. And so that was my constant, thorn in the side.
Well, and I would say 302s are better than a meta refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
which is what I found. This team, they were dead set. We have to do meta refresh. I'm like, no, they're not going to work. And here's why they don't work. And I told them, just take this, just trust me, take these set of 50 and then just use a 301 redirect and let's watch what happens.
yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, we always use meta refresh. Well, again, it's because that's what they were taught or that's what they learned. They think that that's just what you should use.
Yeah.
But why a 301? You know that then, and they would say, do you know that's permanent? I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
Well, and I think for us, like I tried to be nice for most of the time, and give people a chance to like redeem themselves. But what I found was sticking the monetary value of fixes in the tickets was like the night and day difference for when things change for us. It was like, if you add these things or fix these things, it's, $20,000 a month. And I'd have like, I don't know, 10 or 15 tickets in the system. It's like, okay, well, everything that Jim's doing this month has a value of, $200,000 in annual gross revenue increases on average. And, quite honestly, like I did the work to like make sure that the dollar amounts were as accurate as I could possibly make them, but obviously they're not. No one ever went back to go look at them either, which was even better. And then they were like so foaming at the mouth to get more cash in, so it made themselves look good, that they just started doing all the stuff themselves. So that was really helpful for us, is trying to get down to like, if I add this keyword or I do this, how much is that worth?
Right.
So, and then the product managers were totally behind it because they were like, this is great. We're going to get new customers. That's what we're getting our stuff based off of. I'm going to get their bonus. This is going to, so like these dollar signs start clicking in their head. And honestly, that was like one of the best solutions that we ever developed over there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And depending on the environment, again, if you're, speaking about, what the cost of this is, or the sort of, the cost of not doing this is significant. And that's where you get the buy-in from the executive team. That's where, like I like to start the education up there so that once they have a real good understanding in terms of what the point of all this is and really how it kind of always comes back to, this is our number one revenue generating channel. If we don't get these things done, this is what's going to happen on the back end of things. And really emphasizing that, they then get on the developers and say, you guys got to make sure that you get this stuff done. Then you can kind of take, pull the bad guy hat off and put it on them.
And then you've got the other scenario too, which doesn't necessarily include us, but you've got the people who've hired the developers but don't have an SEO.
Right.
Right. And they'll never know. And how do you judge? Like, I'll give you a perfect example because it happened to me yesterday. I was talking to a doctor that's here in Phoenix, and
you're welcome.
You're welcome. I sent him on to other finer pastures. Yes. Nice guy though. So his thing is he's got this website. It looked like it was from like the 1990s. It was pretty bad. And it needed a lot of refreshes, both in content and in design. It was pretty bad. But he didn't want to do any of that stuff. And I was like, well, look, I deal with large enterprise or mid-market companies. Like that's my thing. And you're too small. But, I'm here for half an hour of my time to tell you that you will have to do these things. Like it is going to be a guarantee. Your page loads in 7 seconds, and he did, he had, it's so funny. He had someone do an SSL certificate for him, but then they never redirected the HTTP version to the HTTPS. And it's like all of his links were over on the HTTP side. And I'm like, well, so here's the problem. You're going to need to do these redirects. And he's like, I don't even know how to do it. I don't know. I don't know. And I was like, well, this is why you hire an SEO to like do this stuff for you. But like from his perspective, he hired a developer to do the job and they quote unquote did it. But look what happened, right? Like they left his door wide open. So, it's like I wish there was a way to protect the consumer as well, even if they aren't to the level of having an SEO, having a development staff, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I wonder if there's a way that they can possibly protect themselves from these developers that wind up causing problems. And by the way, I should say, not all the developers are problematic.
No, definitely not. Yeah,
absolutely not. I'm just generalizing it
right.
because it steams our pot. Like, we get really upset.
Yeah, right. I mean, and we can be the bane of their existence just as well, too.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we are.
It's right. It's like, yeah, great. The pain in the ass SEO is here. But what I found is I'm working with a website development agency. All they do is just website development and some branding. But what their SEO, their quote unquote SEO of their site, of their client site, was the Yoast plugin. I'm like, no, my friends, that is not SEO. That is a plugin. And it's funny because John Mueller actually tweeted out, I think in the last 24 hours or so, some of the big sites that rank, really high in search are not using plugins, which is 100% correct.
Yep.
So but this agency knew enough to know, look, I don't know SEO. I just look at a plugin and say, hey, that might be it. But I would rather swap that out for somebody like you. You come in and help during that website redesign with a client. And so it adds a great deal more value and obvious oversight. So it makes it far more valuable for the client than like with this, unfortunately, some of the local services where you have the doctor and it's, he goes to, whether it's GoDaddy or somebody just hears Wix and slap up something and now you have no idea what an SSL certificate is. Yep.
Well, and that's what he told me too. He's like, well, I don't understand what's wrong. Like, he's like, I was ranking for, he was a urologist, by the way. And he was like, I was ranking for like Phoenix urology specialist or something like that. He's like, and I installed the Yoast plugin, but I don't understand why it's not working. I was like, bro, like, they're killing me. I'm like, okay, look, we just need to stop. Now, Joe knows now why I passed him on. No, but
that's why I gave it to you and didn't even try.
I know. He was a nice guy, but it's like, they just don't understand. Like, he's a doctor. He specializes in vasectomies and other stuff. It's like, he doesn't have time to learn this stuff. He doesn't have time to, make sure all this stuff happens for him, but he's also not willing to spend the money to ensure that stuff doesn't happen. And,
but that's the pitch. Well, that's how you approach. You're like, look, you have an expertise. I respect you for your expertise. This is mine. I can't tell you how to do that, but this is how you should do this.
Right.
And that overcomes a decent amount.
Right. And he's still, and I can't believe this exists, but he's still in the mentality of like, build it and they will come. How many people are still into that whole bit?
And any day now.
Any day now. It's like, it's 2020. We can't even go outside anymore. Like, what do you think? You're not gonna build it and they're gonna come, bro. They're gonna go somewhere else. They're not, it's not even like he can do surgeries anyways. He's like, I'm playing golf every day. He's like, I don't have anything to really do it. I was like, I'm pretty sure that I know where all that SEO money is going. Should you decide to actually employ someone. But it is what it is. I think that these large agencies and these large companies like, a GoDaddy or a Coca-Cola or a Disney, they just need to ensure that the training and everything else is going into place and that they're taking their time to break that silo. The silo is the worst part of this whole thing, is that it exists. And, I found that when I was over at GoDaddy too, that like, no one walked up to anyone else's desks. I was the only one, for the most part, that just said, I'm not going to text you. You're literally, I can see you. I'm not going to text you from my desk. That's dumb. I'm going to go over to your desk. And they would look at me like, oh, what are you doing to come over here? Like, what? Why are you here? Like, I just want to talk to you about this stupid thing. Like, we can hash this out in 2 seconds. Well, you should just type it to me. I don't want to type it to you. You're a human being and I'm right here. Let's talk. So
what I want to hear about from Janet is based on like the trainings that you put together. What's one like case success story that you could share? Like, say, like, how bad was the problem you implemented and what was the outcome?
There's a few of them. One of them
to
one of them was it was a bank, and what I had done was I gave them the training, the developers the training. They were getting ready for a migration, so it was like prime opportunity just to, so they already, because they were trained, then they had the, my team overseeing all of that migration, so that we didn't, it was mitigate the traffic loss by making sure all of that was done. So they were like trained prior to, but at the same time, I had another situation where the developers went about, they went and made changes over a weekend to several different folders. And Sunday afternoon, I got a phone call. Why is the traffic tanking?
It's always a Friday evening change.
It was my daughter's birthday, and I'm like, what is this? Why are you calling me? So that's when that was just early on working with them, and I hadn't even gotten a chance to train them yet. And I'm like, all right, so that was a situation where it was like, guys, and it was a 302, or no, they didn't put any redirects in place. It was just, we just made these moves, no redirection whatsoever.
Okay, totally working.
So it was a complete total screw up. So I made that a sort of a focal point of what we were going to train on. The one where the monthly traffic loss 40% month over month. Then within 6 weeks of deploying this huge workbook of technical recommendations, all of which were getting rid of those meta refreshes, and then some other things that were completely overlooked. We had gotten up above the 40%. So we kind of got to a flat, and then it got to 82%. So we increased the traffic by 82% month over month within like 12 weeks of implementing these changes. So it was enough of a shock for the development team to see, like, holy shit, this actually works, Yep. And they just didn't know what they didn't know. And so then they started paying a little bit more attention, like, oh, okay, I guess she knows what she's talking about. And I'm not sure, and to this day, I'll still get them. This is years ago that I work with them, and I'll just get an email or a LinkedIn message like, hey, Janet, I got a question. They're still asking questions, which is great.
You charge them for it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I mean, I just got through with an audit, and it was like 3 months ago or something. And the company just implemented everything probably like last month. And they're like, dude, our traffic doubled. And it was all technical SEO stuff. It was like simple things. Like your XML sitemap is empty. You have all these screwed up redirects, et cetera, et cetera. And they came back and they were like, can you do this for our other site? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, but it's probably better instead of just keep doing these audits, which, by the way, I love. You should just hire me on a retainer so that we can just keep this going and stop this madness.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that even still, like, they don't get it, and you're like, well, they'll come along eventually. We'll figure it out. I mean, because look, keeping me on a retainer for a couple $1,000s a month or more is well worth not losing 50% of your traffic.
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't you do that? And if your developers are causing these problems in the first place, who's going to educate them? You're certainly not, because you don't understand what's going on in the first place. So, it's challenging. It's definitely challenging.
Yeah, it is. And I would also challenge, I'm one of the OG SEOs. Back in the day, we did everything. There was no, I'm the technical SEO, I'm the content SEO. I mean, it was, we did everything. And I think by that, you're forced to have to get into understanding more of the technical side of things. I just so happened that prior to getting into SEO, I was in IT anyway. So it helped having that technical background, but not everybody does. And so I always kind of challenge some of those that avoid the technical part of the technical aspects of SEO to just embrace it. And you can't know everything, but I actually, you can Google it, and somebody has probably written a blog post on how to do something in Shopify or, ATG or Sitecore, or actually there was, when I was working on Payless Shoes, they had a major problem in Demandware, because Demandware was the platform that they had transitioned to from SharePoint. And so there was this major problem within the CMS, and I couldn't figure it out. And I just Googled it. Some guy had written a blog post about the same exact problem, that apparently it was pretty common, but it was just easy just to kind of rip it apart and just say, here's to the developers, here, this is what we need to do. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel or you become a developer yourself. You just need to do a little research, do some analysis and figure it out. And then just, show up with a solution.
Yeah. Are there any platforms that you refuse to work with? Like for me, we had such a bad time dealing with NetSuites and they have a very, very bad implementation. Are there any crazy ones that you've come into play with? You're like, never again?
ATG was always ugly, but it's not that I would ever refuse it. It's a bear, but I would say probably Wix or Squarespace. When you get those people that tell you, I said, well, we're going to migrate you if you don't want to go to, because maybe you don't have the need to go to a larger platform, but go to WordPress, for God's sake. Get off of that third-party crap. And then they're always like amazed, like, oh, how do you do this? And I'm like, it's just so easy for, you go to Google or go to YouTube and say, how do I start a WordPress site?
Yeah, I think for most sub-enterprise companies, I would say that WordPress is probably the best platform. Second to that, if you had like e-commerce, I would probably say like Magento. Seems to be somewhat friendly. But like on an enterprise level, dude, I can tell you that Sitecore was a disaster.
It is. Yeah.
That thing.
It kept me employed. Just Sitecore alone. Right out of the box. Yeah.
I just hated it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're almost up on our time today. Janet, did you have anything else to share?
As I said, I think if anybody has any questions, I do help. So, I'm actually also teach SEOs as well. So not only do I do consulting for SEO for my SEO clients, but I also do work with SEOs. I do coaching, and helping them out. And so you can, email me, Janet at bartoliconsulting.com, and let me know if you need any help, and I'm happy to help. But that is part of what I really enjoy doing is really helping other SEOs just get smarter and get better.
Yep, and that's kind of what it's all about with the DMO, right? The whole thing of us is to try to educate everyone and provide an environment where we can all learn and connect with each other. So if you haven't joined the Digital Marketers Organization, the DMO, as we affectionately call it, please go to digitalmarketers.org or click the link below in YouTube. And obviously, if you'd like more of this kind of content, you can like and subscribe the video. We would love it if you did. We tend to have lunch and learns every week. So I'm happy to have you guys aboard. Thank you to my guests, Janet and Joe, for signing up and coming today. We really appreciate it. Joe, you're kind of here by default, so oh well. So if you're interested in talking to Janet, please hit her up. But until then, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, Janet.
Thank you very much.